action. 5A is the public hearing on the 22-23 tax levy on electronic page 28. Brandon.
Thank you, Dr. Lund. Board members, at the August 8th school board meeting, school board authorized a preliminary budget and tax levy, which you see here included. The summary of this, of the mill levy, is at 111 mills. This is what was approved last year after or with the inclusion of the successful referendum that took place at the end of September of the increased 10 mills for the building fund. So all told, this is the same taxes levied as the year prior. The budget itself represents, just round numbers, about 80% or 79% go to salaries and benefits, 19% go into other supplies, construction, and 2% for utilities. And then just a quick summary on the revenue side, almost 60% of that is made up of state resources that come in, 24% local, and 17% federal. So just kind of a high level as a reminder of what makes up the budget and where those mill levies go. This, of course, there'd be final consideration of the budget. Would come back in front of the board for final approval for the October 10th deadline with the file with the county auditors.
Brandon, did you get any written comments from anybody? Have you received any written comments?
I have not.
Okay, thank you. We'll now open it to the floor if anybody has any comments they want to make in the crowd. If you could just come up to the microphone and Brandon, maybe you could turn on the microphone for him. And just state your name, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm used to that. I teach. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Venaccio. I reside at 1742 South 34th Street, which you all know is right across from Century School. I have just a couple of comments, and normally, after many years, I've decided to start asking some questions of my local government. I've been paying taxes in this county since 1989. I've been paying local taxes for the past 21 years. What I don't see is any attempt by any school boards to go up the chain to request more money from the state level. Instead, they pass it downward. I'm 75 and on a fixed income. The Senior Citizens League indicate that even with a COLA, we're losing 2% per year or more on purchasing power and cost of living. So my question then becomes, what are we looking at for alternate funding to give the seniors in this community some tax relief? What about the North Dakota Lottery? My understanding is that's a $6 million pot of money, the most of which goes into the general fund. And I did get these figures from my District 43 representatives. I've been told that the oil, gas, and coal extraction revenue is going up, even though that might level off. The state has a rainy day fund, last I checked, in excess of $6 billion. So what is being done, or what can the school districts do at the local level to push up requests to get some alleviation for seniors who are on a fixed income, who cannot continually afford the tax increases when we've already paid to send our kids to school multiple times over? Maybe some things could be a fee for service. Or take a look at maybe questioning some unneeded tax breaks they were given. What I'm suggesting, or just asking respectfully, is that the school board start considering going up the chain and seeing what untapped sources of revenue are available at the state and federal levels to perhaps get more state relief, especially on the school portion of the mill levy, and maybe look forward to decrease the mill levy. But again, I support education. I've taught at the graduate and undergraduate level, and I know its importance. However, as I age and I see a restricted income, it puts us in a bind of what do we spend our money on, and we cannot continue to afford increase after increase after increase if there's money sitting in the pot that perhaps can be used for better purposes. So that's my comment. Thank you very much for listening, and you all have a good afternoon.
Thank you so much. Dr. Brenner, do you have any comments?
I do. Thank you, sir, for bringing that to our attention. And just to respond to your question about have we had conversations at the state level, I'll kind of frame this two different ways. Number one, there's this committee called Team Grand Forks, where it's all the interagencies, government entities working together along with business leaders. Every 2 years we go to the Capitol. We have actually a privately held meeting with the governor and a lieutenant governor about these very concepts that you brought forward. We're the only community who organizes the way we do when we arrive there. But let me just go back a little bit historically. I was in a school district a long time ago in another community where we were part of a lawsuit suing the state for not funding education the way they ought to be funding it. It took a lot of years. It took like 12, 14 years for that to be reconciled. And then let's just fast forward to 2013 when state was extracting oil at, barrels that you couldn't even count, ad infinitum at the end of the day. And so at that point, legislators were saying, we will fund 80% of public education. Per pupil payments will go up to 80%. That's a stark difference than funding at 60%. If they were still doing that today, our per pupil payment would be well over $12,000 per student. Instead, it's $10,200. So the push then is at the local taxing level. So, but we will take your voice. As a matter of fact, I might recommend that you serve on Team Grand Forks when we go to Bismarck, because what you're portraying is a very realistic and identifiable experience here at the local level. So I will carry your voice forward.
Thank you. I've already stirred the pot with Jonelle Benke and Zach Ista and Mary Campbell.
Okay.
I told them when they get in, I would buy them a cup of coffee and we'd remind them.
Okay. As soon as your COLA goes up.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening. You all have a good evening.
Thank you. Anyone else that wanted to speak tonight? If not, we'll move on to, the only other thing I wanted to point out is Dr. Brenner talked about the state level, but they also do this at the federal level, especially because we have a military base here, that we have a voice in Washington as well. So let's move on to item 5B, which is celebrating success. Not a very well kept secret anymore because it's been all over the place, but Dr. Brenner.
Dr. Lund, please join me. Mrs. T, would you please join me at this time? So you have in your board packet a cover memo that really just talks about the history that Mrs. Ivona Todorovich has navigated just the last few weeks. If we could hearken back to last May, Mrs. T was named as the School District Teacher of the Year. She was also named as the Grand Forks County Teacher of the Year, which moved her to the state competition. So for several months, we knew that she was in the Final Four, which is a big deal. Final Four, Frozen Four, Teacher of the Year, Final Four. It's a big deal. And for me to be in Bismarck last week to witness the unveiling and announcement that Mrs. T was the North Dakota Teacher of the Year was something else. I might have a hard time not getting emotional talking about this. So let me just give you just a couple of comments that I shared at Red River High School when Superintendent Kirsten Baszler came to also recognize Mrs. T as a finalist. Ivona Todorovich is an example of the American dream. Her journey here was not easy. Leaving family behind was devastating in a war-torn Croatia and Bosnia. She followed both her heart and her head, and with husband Alex, who is here tonight, they adapted to a new way of life. That's the simple version. There is depth and complexity with her immigration, but it's those experiences she brings each and every day to her school family, her students. In many cases, she has lived their lives. She has credibility, she has judgment, she has care and concern embedded in her DNA. And you won't find a bigger heart and champion for students. That is Ivona Todorovich, Grand Forks Public School District Teacher of the Year and North Dakota Teacher of the Year, who now moves on to the national competition, and she has a story to tell. Congratulations, Mrs. T. On behalf of the school board, we have an orchid for you today, and in the near future, we will display a plaque in the main entryway of this building recognizing past district teachers of the year, along with you as Grand Forks School District, Grand Forks County, and North Dakota Teacher of the Year. We wish you well at the national competition, and now we welcome you to the podium, and we'll hold that for you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Oh, thank you so much, deep from my heart. And they just told me this is just the beginning. So anyway, it's not part of my speech, but just kind of looking around the room, there's so many connections, and you know your home when you go around and you recognize so many familiar faces, and you have all these connections. Even, for example, Ryan doesn't know me, but I know him because he's an excellent swimmer. My son was his coach when he was, this may be big, Daniel, Coach Daniel, yeah. So even when we go there, I just like, that's a kind of a neat connection because my son was a swimmer for so many years. And we were part of the swimming family too, same as Dr. Lewis. I could connect really strongly with your story from last year. So anyway, so good evening. Greetings to the school board, President Dr. Lund, and thank you. I told him I cannot call him Mr. Lund because he was Daniel's pediatrician for so many years. And it was like, persuading, Daniel, today we're going to go with Dr. Lund. So anyway, school board members, NEA, Mr. Olson, student board members, Maggie's gone, but Ryan, hello. Dr. Brenner, Ms. Gilach, Dr. Lewis, Mr. Bach, okay, I have to learn. My team, amazing team from Red River High School, and other guests present tonight. Of course, thank you to Alex, he gave me a ride tonight. So anyway, but I just want to say thank you for inviting me to join with you today, and your invitation incredibly humbles me because it was the reason for the invitation is to celebrate me. Well, with the great pride and humility, I accepted the award a week ago at the Capitol in Bismarck. And I can't describe you how it was. It was just a lot of emotions going through. But when I came back, actually my students are the winners because they were holding the trophy. They were holding everything I got and like, oh, we're the winners, Mrs. Durish. I said, yes, you're the winners. Well, honestly, I'm humbled and overwhelmed when I think about so many excellent teachers across this district, and I get to be named the North Dakota Teacher of the Year. So I want to start this evening's address with the word Ubuntu. In Africa, there is a concept known as Ubuntu. The profound sense that we are human only through the humanity of others. Desmond Tutu says, bringing people together is what I call Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. Far too often, especially in the individualistic cultures, people think of themselves as just individuals, separated from one another, whereas you are connected and what we do affect the whole world, especially teachers. When you do well, it spreads out. It is for humanity. So let me tell you a story to illustrate what it means. And I will start with the words of Dr. Lewis that reminded us of last year during our professional development. Really 3 powerful concepts and words: access, opportunity, and belonging. 27 years ago, a young teacher from the war-torn country of Bosnia came to Grand Forks, as you hear from Dr. Brenner. It was me. So many volunteers greeted me and my husband from the Global Friends Coalition, including 2 teachers of this district. They kindly took me to the main office of the Education Center, that time was downtown before the flood, and helped me apply for a job. They explained the process of applying, which was foreign to me at that time, coming from a different country, especially the war. They kindly talked about education. We had amazing discussions and terrific conversations about education in this community and United States. Among everything else, they helped me with the potential interview questions. So all of this I will call the access. The members of my new community helped me gain access, ending with an interview at a local elementary school and being hired as a Title I paraeducator. Through my work as a paraeducator, I have had so many opportunities that my colleagues, direct supervisors, and other fellow teachers have given me or shown me, so I can continue to practice the profession I love and learn more about it. Also, the other community members of UND and other education organizations in town instructed me how to apply for college. Once again, I had to go back and find all the necessary resources. Of course, many told me, hey, Mona, but that was all you. That's your hard work. You are the one. Yes, I did. I persevere. I never gave up, working 3 jobs at that time, at the beginning, having a little kid with no mom or dad around me, building my career and following my dreams. But the community of people helped me with opportunities that led me to feel I do belong here. I could sum it up. Sorry. My community members looked at my assets, not my deficits. They did not make assumptions about me and my life and me as a person, but listened to my story to find who I really was and I am. And they did encourage me and help me during the hard times and challenging times and even happy times. Isn't that what we do as teachers? So now back to that word Ubuntu. Not until I began teaching my EL students and working with my EL families that I did really learn the true meaning of the word Ubuntu. Honestly, they taught me, not just me, but the whole community of learners at Red River High School. They taught me about humility, generosity, patience, perseverance, love, and also fear. So how can I stand in front of you today and tell you that I deserve this award without telling you my story where the whole community of Grand Forks Public Schools, UND showed me access, gave me opportunities, and made me feel that I belong. So I can do what I love, and that is educating young minds. I can say, I was a good student. I was a good human being. I listened. I communicated. I worked hard. I helped others. I gave back. I became actually a fantastic problem solver, and finally the North Dakota Teacher of the Year. But like Zulu people would say, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about we working together as one. And in these challenging times, we need to be reminded that that is our power, to care together, to work together, to educate together the future leaders and citizens of this community, state, and this country. So we have a big job to do, all of us. We can do it, but only if we do it together. Thank you. Ubuntu. Thank you. I guess I didn't cry.
Just remember, when you come back after winning the national title, you'll have to have a longer speech, so.
I thank you so much. Thank you. I'm just glad that I didn't fall apart, so thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
Well, after that, let's adjourn the meeting. That's a good ending spot, so thank you again for being here. Let's move on to school board meeting norms on electronic page 30. Joel.
Thank you, Dr. Lunn. The norms are: be prepared, be on time, value and respect each other, exercise thoughtful deliberation and conversation, be professional at the board table and when visiting with the general public, speak up when the norms are not being followed, advocate on behalf of students, and keep the community in mind.
Thank you. Let's move on to item 6A, which is the consent agenda on electronic pages 31 through 33. Do I have a motion and a second for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Cynthia. Do we have a second? Second by Joel. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Let's move on to the 6B, which is the waiver of years' experience and appointment, and it was at the table side. It isn't in the packet. Do I have a motion and a second for that? Moved by Bill. Do I have a second? Second by Monty. Any questions or clarifying questions or comments about this? Seeing none, the motion is to approve it. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Let's move on to 6C now, which is the general fund financial statement on pages 34 through 43. Brandon.
Thank you, Dr. Lund, members of the board. The financial statement in front of you is for the first 2 months of the year, July and August. Those are summarized by total revenues of $6.9 million over expenditures of $4 million. So that's in the positive territory of just under $3 million. It's worth noting that it's very early, and if you look through those reports, there's not a lot of detail within them. The first report, general fund financial statement, that just compares the budget to the actuals and how they're coming in. The only thing I would even take the time to highlight here is the state sources are convenient. This time of the year, they do come in quickly and consistently for the first half through essentially December, and then they'll kind of slow their pace. And a lot of times the federal dollars will come at the end, as most of those are reimbursement types of process, although we call those in periodically. And then the local funds come in consistently throughout the year as well. The second report is a comparison year over year, so sometimes there's a little more information to glean there when we compare at this point in time what it looked like to last year at the same point in time. Again, though, it's too early to really give so much. The one note I would offer you in the comment box of that second report is any variability you'll find between those reports, although they're quite similar, is related to timing as these numbers begin to establish themselves at the start of the year. With that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And there are a couple graphics that help kind of depict where we're headed, both revenue and expenditure and then balance of funds.
Clarifying questions or comments? I'll just point out, again, this is a reason why we have to have an ending balance fund at the beginning of the school year, or we would be borrowing money from banks right now. So if there are no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion to approve the general fund statement from July 1 through August 31st, 2022.
So moved.
Moved by Dave. Do we have a second? Second by Jeff. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Let's move on to item 6D, which is designation of North Dakota School Board Association Convention delegates. It's on electronic page 44. Given our school district size, we are allowed up to 5 delegates to the school board convention. To date, I know of 3 that are going. Are there any other individuals that are planning on going to the North Dakota School Board Association meeting in October? Dave, you look confused.
Not confused. I'll attend the new board member piece, but then I have a flight out of town.
Okay.
So that's why my name is absent from the list.
Perfect. That was my question, and I didn't catch you before the meeting, so thank you. If we don't have anybody else that's planning on attending, I would have somebody to make a motion to appoint those 3 individuals to be delegates to that convention, and those 3 are Josh, Monty, and Joel. So I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve Josh, Monty, and Joel to be our delegates.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's move on to item 6E, which is the annual compliance report on pages 44 through 49. Dr. Brenner.
Thank you, Dr. Lund. Again, on page 45, I'll just walk through the memo with you. It's pretty straightforward. North Dakota Century Code 15.1-0606 requires that all North Dakota schools and school districts must submit an annual compliance report to the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction by October 1 of each school year in order to be declared approved and receive foundation aid. The report is completed and submitted on the state STARS system. In order to obtain certification for approval, the school district superintendent must submit a report for each of the district's schools, complete with a signature of the school principal and the superintendent. The annual compliance report must be approved by the school board. prior to submission by me as your superintendent. Attached is a copy of the summary report as evidence of compliance by each of the District 17 schools. All school principals indicate complete compliance with all compliance areas. So the administrative recommendation is to approve the 2022-23 annual compliance report.
Clarifying questions from board members about the compliance report? Seeing none, do we have a motion and a second to approve the compliance report as outlined? Motion by Jeff. Do we have a second? Second. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Let's move on to item 6. If I read my writing, I think it's F now, which is the appointment of school board members to the Icon District Leadership Valley Middle School Referendum Committee. Put that on your name tag. So, it's on electronic page 50. When we had the Valley referendum before, the one that didn't pass, we had the same process in place. And I'm trying to remember who was on it. We had a group of, I think it was 3 individuals that were on it that were very helpful, and they would report back to the board at board meetings. They wouldn't supplant Icon coming to update us, but in between times those three board members could help with where we are with progress-wise and stuff. So I would recommend that we approve Dave, Bill, and Joel to be our representatives. And I'll open it up for questions by anybody. If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve those 3 to sit on this committee.
I'll make the motion to approve Dave Berger, Bill Palmasino, and Joel Larson on the Icon District Leadership Committee.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second by Monty. Any questions? Seeing none, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries.
I did have one question. I'm assuming that they agreed to that.
I don't know how much arm twisting occurred. I wasn't involved in it, but they did all agree. Dr. Brenner reached out to him beforehand. Because the meetings occur at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday, 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, so they did agree. Thank you for expressing your concern, because I had the same concern, so appreciate that. Let's move on to item 6G, which is the Superintendent Evaluation Committee reports on electronic page 52 and 53, and then also at your table side is the input evaluation form from last November. Josh.
Thank you, Dr. Lund. The Superintendent Evaluation Committee met with Dr. Brenner on September 14th. We discussed the evaluation tool and specific criteria around, and we mutually established that we agreed on this specific tool that was used in the past year, and committee members are myself, Monty, Eric, Jeff, Michelle Shepard, and Jeff Manley. The evaluation instrument and format is the same as the past year. November 15th and March 15th are the evaluation dates as per Century Code. Strategic plan will accompany the evaluation tool. The superintendent did discuss goals, his personal goals, and those will also accompany the evaluation tool. And he will provide a narrative around that to go along with those. The timeline as shown on the memo is there, and also the minutes of our meeting are on the next page. I would also comment that there was a lot of good discussion around how the tool worked well in the past year, and some feedback regarding possible changes or additions. A 360 review was discussed, and at this time, that item was not recommended to move forward, but the tool overall appeared to be extensive and provided the ability to all board members and to provide, deep feedback for this overall evaluation. So with that, the committee and administrative recommendations are to approve the process for this year's superintendent evaluations as outlined.
Clarifying questions for committee members. Josh. Okay, go ahead, Cynthia.
So I had a few questions that I wanted to ask. And please know that I do this not out of, well, I don't know why I'm going that direction. Okay, it's kind of like Dr. Lewis's reporting of not proficient. But anyway, okay. So my two questions are around getting the knowledge, because I've served on the committee in the past and I've evaluated the superintendent. So the two questions that I looked at are number 25 and number 44. So those are always the two questions that I find a little bit challenging. And so I'm glad that you talked about a 360, although I think a 360 is still, can potentially be private, and that the person could be requesting that and then find that feedback. That's from a very quick Google search, I have to say. I don't know much about a 360. But, so the number 25, if you look at it, this is just a hard one to know whether I trust that Dr. Brenner is not, is telling us the truth. Regularly meets or corresponds with building administrators to discuss, well, you can read it, to discuss implementation of curriculum, including instructional strategies and challenges associated with implementation. I've never really figured out how to find out if building administrators, how they're included in some of those decisions without asking building administrators. And I haven't called up building administrators in the past. And the other one, number 44, superintendent encourages and empowers principals to make decisions on behalf of their buildings and to implement innovative programs and services in their buildings. We don't really hear directly from principals or administrators, so I just am wondering how we're going to get at that. So the question number 43, that's an easier one, because Dr. Brenner does a great job communicating through the Friday focus, and I watched the video, and so I know what Dr. Brenner is saying, and I think it's getting a lot of views, so people are really watching it, and I'm sure the videos are producing even more views, even with that last one, which was over 8 minutes. So I think that number 43 is easier, but I have trouble always with 44 and 25, and there might be others, but those were the two that stood out. And just wondering if the committee had suggestions as to how we can make sure that administrators and principals and teachers and staff get their voices heard, and how we learn of that. So I'll put that to you, I guess.
I know in the past on question 25, I've directly called the superintendent and just said, how do you meet and correspond? How do you talk to your principals? And it wasn't just Dr. Brenner, it was Dr. Nyblad in the past, and they would tick off, well, I have these meetings and these meetings, and this is part of it. And so the superintendent would tick off the times he did that and stuff. And now I didn't go back and check with all the people involved, but I know those kinds of meetings are occurring and have occurred in the past, so.
Well, that's easier now because Dr. Brenner does provide on that Friday focus his meetings. But, I guess it's still a one-way channel. We only hear, I'm not trying to be argumentative, but we're only hearing that voice. And I just wonder how we could get some feedback, even from direct reports in the building, like our HR director and our business manager, and that at that level.
Well, I'll let other committee members speak, but I would ask then, who are we evaluating? Are we evaluating the superintendent, or are we evaluating the principals? No, I get the question. Go ahead, Josh.
I guess I would just say, I think there was quite a bit of conversation around that, exactly about how all of that exactly happens, and what we came to was the fact that, you know, he does have various level meetings, executive leadership, cabinet, you know, different meetings where he's meeting with all of these individuals. There's the opportunity for feedback, concerns, comments, all the things to come forward. And in turn, we are evaluating him. But I would say it was quite extensively discussed. So I don't know if anyone else on the committee has any further comments.
Go ahead, Monty.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would agree with that, Josh. We talked about that. We spoke specifically, since Josh and I were new to the committee, we had just kind of looked through the questions, and certainly a couple of those questions came forward. And we sort of, to complement what Josh said, we felt like, for lack of saying it, no news is good news sort of thing. We felt that people would let us know. Certainly, we would be the people that they would go to if they felt that there was an issue, or if they felt that that Dr. Brenner wasn't communicating with people well enough. Or we thought too we could reach out directly, although you have to be careful with that. But we felt like there was a way we could get to the answer we were looking for. I don't know if that.
And Michelle Shepard's not here, but she's on the committee too, and she and I are the ones that have been on there before and had the same discussion. We even brought up well, can't we put in not applicable? And then we talked about how well that screws up the whole report. So, Dr. Brenner.
Yeah, if I could just add a little bit. There are a couple of ways to answer the question from my positional purview. One is, we have Dr. Lewis and Ms. Galach who facilitate elementary, middle, and high school principal meetings, so they're an extension of my office. They're part of executive cabinet. We meet regularly. As a matter of fact, on Mondays we have 3 meetings together. We have the three superintendents meeting, then we have executive cabinet, which expands to 2 more people, Brandon and our HR director, once we have that new person in place, and then we have our administrative cabinet, which then gets to be 12, 13, 14 people in my office. So there are a lot of voices who work directly with principals, but the other way where principals do have a voice is our Cabinet Advisory Council. And that's all administrators across the district are invited to be part of that monthly meeting. And we have a Google Doc agenda, and they drive what's on the agenda. I don't. Periodically, we need to put something on the agenda, but it's really their meeting. They have my ear, and so I listen to them. They bring whatever concerns they might have, whether it's staffing shortages or staffing shortages or staffing shortages. That's our topic of conversation. But there are some other places. Amy Barch's work as our chief academic officer. I mean, she has the instructional design coaches. They're the real support at the classroom level. They're the ones who bring curriculum opportunities to the school board. So I can add all of that in a narrative for that specific question, so you at least have something to respond to. But I get, Dr. Shab, the kind of the wonkiness of it. How do you really know? So I'll add some context that I hope will be helpful. And any other questions, and I think Josh has already alluded to it, if there's something on here where you wouldn't even know how to score, please call me, and I'm happy to have those conversations. I've had them in the past, and because the most meaningful part of this tool might not be if you check 1, 2, 3, or 4. It's the narrative that comes back that's really valuable for me. So I just wanted to add those pieces.
Thank you. Amber.
Dr. Brenner, you sort of answered my question, but I always have more trouble with the, have we submitted the state assessment on time through Power School? I just don't know what I don't know, so it's really hard for me, or the superintendent oversees a district-wide purchasing system that helps stand, I think those are important because I think it shows fiscal responsibility and it helps with the academic curriculum, but I don't know if it is appropriate for you to score yourself ahead of time, or if there is sort of a just narrative that would help with some of those, just a little bit past the surface of, yes, now I have an understanding that he has the cabinet, I trust that everything's working, because some of those are, I just am I trust that it's being done because we get a budget report and it seems like we're saving money, but you just don't know what you don't know, I guess.
Thank you. Any further clarifying questions or comments? If not, the committee recommendation is to approve the process that we've outlined. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second by Jeff. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's move on to item 6H, which is third-party individuals/entities student information requests. It's on electronic page 53. Dr. Brenner.
Thank you again, Dr. Lunn. Your new policy, our new policy, FGA, Student Education Records and Privacy, requires board approval of student information, sharing requests from third-party individuals. I'm just going to skip right over to the next sentence. The policy also requires a superintendent to maintain a master list of all individuals and entities having access to student information, including school district personnel by title. We've had a number of requests. You see a small list in front of you. Number one, military recruiters from various branches. We have the Grand Forks Fast Break Club, a local youth basketball organization, and then we have Doorway to College that provides ACT prep. Those are just a few that are waiting, chomping at the bit to get out. We have a pretty lengthy list that we'll eventually put in front of you, but we're just working it through various people, some different eyes, making sure we have all the right information so we don't have to bring it to you multiple times. But what we do have in front of you today is a bit time sensitive, so this is grounded in century code, this is law, so we do have to bring it in front of you, so we can't wordsmith this policy. My apologies for that. So our recommendation is for the aforementioned third-party individuals to receive student information as allowed by policy and or law.
So that last comment was aimed at me because I whined at the committee meeting saying, why do we have to do this? And I said, can't we amend the policy so it can be done where it should be done at the district level? And the answer was from the two experts over here was no, because this is state law. So by state law, it has to come to this body. So that's why we're seeing it here. So clarifying questions, comments about this. Go ahead, Monty.
So I have a question for you. So does this excuse kiddos who have, or parents who have signed off on FERPA then? Does it still eliminate, obviously a military recruiter isn't going to look for somebody in third grade, but if a parent has signed off on a FERPA permission slip, does that excuse them from receiving information?
Somebody just whispered in my ear, it depends on what the request is. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
And are they kind of age appropriate then? I mean, like military recruiters are just going to be looking for high school kiddos, right? I mean, is that, I just wanted to confirm that. I would guess so, but.
You heard that? Okay.
Other than hockey, it goes down to age 6, so no.
What was the age?
17 and above.
And as Dr. Brenner hinted, there's going to be a whole bunch of these that are going to come to us in the future. Further clarifying questions or comments?
I have just,
Go ahead, Joe.
what sort of information are just pick out the Doorway to College. Are they getting home addresses, those kinds of information, or is it just something they get in school? Like what's the extent of it? Because and then an add-on is, do they sign something like I promise not to share this with, the posse comitatus and otherwise?
We'll turn to our expert to tell us. Cindy?
Most of that information is the directory information that is listed in our policy, which is name, address. They do not sign off anything about sharing. We have talked about that.
And this is something that's evolving over time, so I think we'll be having to relook at this down the road. Go ahead, Amber.
I apologize for not asking these questions in advance of the meeting, but I just pulled up the policy in front of me to learn more about perhaps like why someone would ask for this information. So just looking at this list alone, my first question that stood out was, I get military recruiters and ACT prep, but the basketball club, I was just like, where does it end then for activities or religious groups or whomever? And then it becomes a really big lift for our staff to have to provide these all the time. I didn't consider Joel's point of view, but that's a concern for me, that someone could then take this list and distribute it however or wherever. And I also, I trust that the district is screening what they're asking for, but not knowing. So like, looking at the definition of directory information, it could include anything from address to date and place of birth, school email, photograph. So I'm just, weight and height of members of athletic teams. Like, I just don't know, like, is the doorway to college looking for my kids' weight and height if they're on an athletic team? Like, I don't know what all of that entails. So I think now that it's become a policy and asking the questions is just helpful, because we haven't had to deal with this before.
I'll take a stab at that. Under North Dakota open records law, we are not allowed to ask who they are, why they want the information, or how they want to receive it. However, in these policies and in the protection of student data, we can ask exactly that. And per the policy, they do have to have a legitimate educational interest. And in the case of Fast Break, I actually did check with legal counsel. I questioned that myself. And with the school district also having athletics available to their students and feeling that is important to their education, that is where our legal counsel has felt that we can give that information to them.
So with regards to that, do they also give you the exact criteria of the directory information that they're asking for? Or is it just you provide whatever's in that directory, they can have access to all of it?
No, I make them be very specific.
Okay.
And if there is something that I don't feel fits, I will consult administration, and we will make a decision and either tell them no and state the reason why, or in the case of regular open records, state the law that allows us to not release an information.
Okay.
Dave?
One clarifying question. Is this access, say we determine this is appropriate for these three agencies at this time, there's a longer list later, it's approved. Is it for a specific period of time? Is it one academic year and the ask comes back to us? Is there a review? Is there an understanding that once an organization has been given access, it's in perpetuity? Just clarifying what we're promising and for what length of time.
There is nothing currently in the language of the law that puts a specific time period on it.
Further clarifying questions? Go ahead, Amber.
If board members felt like there should be a time frame, like for this academic year, and or if we felt as though it would be important to indicate somewhere or have a sign off that we can release the information so long as they don't share it, what does that potentially look like? If board members had hesitation or wanted to put a time frame or wanted to, are we allowed to set those parameters, and what does that look like?
Go ahead.
I would just want to consult with our legal team to give you an accurate response on that.
I'm not sure the policy speaks to it directly, so. Further clarifying questions? Go ahead, Cynthia.
So what group do you think Fast Break, since you had the attorneys look at it, what group does the Fast Break fall under with the, so I pulled up the policy as well. I mean, there's all kinds of accrediting bodies for purposes of accreditation, an organization conducting a study for the district. What category does Fast Break fall under?
I would say they're just trying to assist in building a basketball program, K through 12, that would help out our middle and high school athletic teams.
So I don't know if they fit under this list in here, but you had them look at that policy? I'm kind of directing this at Cindy. I don't know, it doesn't seem to fit right.
Any other semi-clarifying comments, questions? Go ahead, Amber.
It would seem like there's maybe a couple unanswered questions or questions that might lend to, I certainly understand that the district has a long list besides these three, but I want to make sure we get it right since this is a new policy. And I would maybe ask that we consider, or just to hear feedback from others, if this is something that we table to the next meeting while we ask some clarifying questions. Postpone.
I know these three are more than raring to go. I don't know, have we not used this policy? Because it's been in place for a year. Has this policy not been used yet?
No, we did not have this policy in place. These three particular agencies or group of agencies that are mentioned on here have received this very same information that they're requesting now every year in the past. They're requesting directory information, which is student names and addresses. The military are also requesting phone numbers, which by the Solomon Act, federal law, they can get phone numbers. However, we will not be giving them phone numbers because we do not track student phone numbers. So that's an example of information where they're requesting something, but in our review, we are not giving them everything that they ask for. I don't know if that helps clarify just a little bit more. I know in the Fast Break Club, they do a mailer to the students, inviting them to participate in Fast Break. They do have some deadlines right now that in order to get their information out to the prospective students, they have some deadlines that they need to meet. The Doorway to College, his request actually came the first part of September. We delayed the request, which was very upsetting for them because their first ACT test prep date was September 15th. So they were unable to do their normal mailers to those students to invite them to those ACT test prep dates.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
So just a comment based on Cindy's clarification there. This looks like a whole lot more. You know, under the policy, the directory information includes address, date and place of birth, dates of attendance, grade level, degrees, honors, and awards received, most recent school attended, name, participation in sports, photographs, school email address, telephone listing, weight and height, it goes on. So if we're just providing names and addresses, that's what you're saying,
For these three requests, yes.
then I think that's good to know.
I think I'm fine with, knowing the history of these three organizations and what we've done in the past, but I do think now that this policy is under board review that we have to review these, I think it's appropriate for us to consider parameters as to where that information gets passed on to, potentially how long, and it's good to know that they're just asking for name and address here, because again, if the ACT prep is wanting to have access to my kid's weight and height, like that, I don't want them to have that, so I don't know what, given the time frame, I certainly want to respect that and am okay with approving these, knowing their history, but I definitely think that policy should be kicked back for review for some parameters.
Can I ask but is this right? Is a list just pulled out of Power School, Cindy, and you just say, we want name, date, and address or something? Is that how that technically is generated for them, or do you have to do that? If you don't mind me asking that.
No, it is pulled out of Power School, yes.
So you'd be able,
Yeah.
so they'd be able to determine then, if it's pulled out of a spreadsheet in Power School, they'd be able to determine exactly what information gets pulled. So that's the mechanic of how that gets created. It comes out of a spreadsheet, so you would highlight or determine what set of information gets shared. Even if the requester says, I want height and weight, which we probably don't keep anyway, the person generating the list would either include that information or not include that information based upon direction from Dr. Brenner and Cindy and all of us. So does that help identify how that comes together a little bit? So it's not just like, hey, we'll give them this. You have to generate that list.
Yeah, if somebody makes a request for directory information, we're not just going to routinely say, yep, here's everything that we allow as directory information, here's the list. They have to tell us specifically what they want, then we review specifically what they want and determine whether or not they have the legitimate educational need. We can ask those questions when they're looking for student data, and then we would either give them what's allowed or what we have determined is okay, and tell them again, if we're not giving them something, we have to have a reason for not giving it to them.
If I may just clarify, the height and weight example has come up several times. It says in the policy specifically that's just for athletic teams, and that's not data that we keep on children. So as Monty was alluding to, we would not be able to pull that data anyhow.
My thoughts on this is we should probably approve these three. If the board wishes to have the policy review committee look at this policy, because it's been approved, it's already approved. If the board wishes to do that, I would suggest that we have to get legal involved, because this is a required policy that's set in state and federal law. And I don't feel comfortable, maybe Mr. Larson would if he was on policy review committee, but I don't feel comfortable reviewing it and say, well, yeah, it looks good to me, or no, let's change it this and that. I think we would need legal advice on what we can and can't do, because I think we could find ourselves. This is the reason we joined going to the North Dakota School Board Association to do these policies, because there's a whole cadre of attorneys that know a whole heck of a lot more than us non-attorneys in Bismarck about that. So if the board wishes to have this policy looked at, it's fine to go back to policy review, but I think there should be some legal advice generated there. Go ahead, Jeff.
And I agree with you with legal advice, but I think we should send it back, because right now, if there's nothing in there, we're just giving these places information in perpetuity with no expiration dates or anything like that. So I think it should be a one-shot deal, and they have to ask every time, or it's maybe a one-year kind of a deal.
Well, and I think besides having legal review, I think we can go back to the North Dakota School Board Association and their cadre of attorneys to say, okay, is this forever or what, get more specifics on it. So further clarifying questions, comments? You guys blew my chance to get a meeting done before 7, so thank you. Now, other clarifying questions or comments, or what are the board's wishes with this item that's in front of us?
I'll make the motion to approve the request and send the policy back to policy committee for further review.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? second by Monty. Any further final clarifying questions or comments? Good discussion, important discussion, appreciate it. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's move on to item 7, which is other announcements. Dr., what? Oh, I thought, okay, I thought I missed something. Usually when somebody does that, I missed an item or something, so, okay, let's move on. Announcements. Dr. Brennan, do you have any announcements?
I have a couple, and then Dr. Lewis has an announcement as well. Finance Committee meets this Thursday at 5 p.m. And also, please check your calendars for Finance Committee to meet again on October 13th and October 18th. We have some timelines that we need to hit, so please check your calendars for that. And Dr. Lewis.
All right. I am excited to invite our board to the 2022 Indigenous Peoples Day. New location this year, which I have not been, so I'm so excited, but I've heard it's beautiful, at the North Dakota Museum of Art. 5:30 to 6:30 I know won't work for most of us. That's a social hour. But then from 6:30 to 8, we have various events. We have a hand drum group, etc., a fashion show, and then 2 of our alums are actually going to be recognized there. One is Corporal Shane Rothenberger, and he is our Grand Forks County Sheriff's Office, and he was Central High School grad from 2012. Then we have an appearance by Miss North Dakota, Sonona LaRock, and she is a graduate from Central 2015, and then our fashion show is also by a grad from Central High School 2013, Randall Morin Jr. So again, we would love to see you there from 6:30 to 8.
Thank you, and that's the day we do have a board meeting, but we're starting at 5 o'clock if I remember right, and it's a short board meeting. Any other announcements? Anything from GFEA? Okay, thank you. Let's move on to 7B, board requests for future consideration. Any future consideration board requests? Seeing none, let's move on to 7C, school board norms. Joel, how did we do? An A, thank you. Okay, well, we are adjourned.